What if I told you that the social media algorithm you are desperately trying to game right now doesn't actually exist?
Yeah, it's completely gone.
Sometime in March 2026, they literally unplugged it. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're looking at a massive, highly technical, 130 plus page document. It's titled The Unofficial LinkedIn Algorithm Guide, Q1 2026 edition.
It is an incredibly dense, fascinating piece of research. What the authors have done here is synthesize their engineering publications, academic papers and patent filings into this roadmap of how the platform actually operates today.
Right. And our mission for today's deep dive is really simple. We're going to completely dismantle those outdated hacks pushed by platform gurus.
God, there are so many of them.
There's so many. And we're going to reveal the actual two-stage AI architecture that is secretly governing the platform right now. We're going to decode exactly how this system evaluates your words and your behavior.
Which is going to change everything for how people post.
Exactly. So for you listening, if you're frustrated by posting great content only to hear crickets, or you're exhausted trying to reverse engineer a mechanical system that is officially dead, you can stop guessing. By the end of this conversation, you'll know how to strategically position yourself in front of the exact professionals you want to reach.
The shift in March 2026, it fundamentally rewrote the rules of professional networking online. The platform moved away from what engineers called a heterogeneous architecture.
Which, if we cut through the jargon, was essentially just a bunch of disconnected rule-based systems, right? Like a
Yeah.
giant scoreboard.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
like was worth 1 point, a comment was worth 2 points, and you just tried to rack up a high score.
But that scoring system is completely gone. They replaced all of that with a two-stage machine learning pipeline. So stage one is retrieval, which is powered by a causal large language model, or LLM. And then stage two is ranking, which is
Mm.
powered by a generative recommender.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of this new system, like applying for a highly competitive job at a massive corporation. The retrieval stage, that causal LLM, is the AI recruiter.
Right.
It's scanning hundreds of millions of resumes and cover letters to build a strict, non-negotiable shortlist of just 2,000 candidates for a specific role. Then, the ranking stage, the generative recommender, is the final interview panel that decides who actually gets the job.
Or, in the context of the platform, who gets placed at the very top of a user's feed.
Right, exactly.
And looking at it through that lens really highlights why this architectural shift changes the entire game. We moved from this one-dimensional numerical point system to a two-dimensional system based entirely on language and behavior.
Language and behavior.
Right. Language drives the retrieval stage, behavior drives the ranking stage. And the kicker is, if you do not pass that first gate, if the AI recruiter doesn't pick your resume based on your language, the final interview panel never even evaluates your content.
Oh, wow. So you don't even get in the room.
You don't get in the room. It doesn't matter how visually stunning your post is or how much value it provides. If it fails retrieval, it practically doesn't exist in the system.
So think about your own workflow for a second. Are you still spending an hour trying to format a post to score points with an algorithm that no longer exists, instead of, speaking the semantic language the new AI recruiter is actually looking for?
And changing that habit requires understanding the nuts and bolts of how that AI recruiter actually reads. Since the retrieval stage goes first, we really have to look at the causal LLM.
Let's get into it. How does this causal LLM build its shortlist?
So the causal LLM is a fine-tuned LAM-A3 3 billion parameter model. Its primary job is to read your profile text and your positive engagement history and then translate your professional identity into a mathematical format. They call it a member embedding.
Okay, a member embedding.
Right, and it plots you at a specific coordinate in a 3072 dimensional concept space.
3,072 dimensions. I feel like we need to visualize that because
Right.
human brains struggle past, 3 dimensions.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Imagine mapping a movie. Let's say dimension 1 is how funny it is. Dimension 2 is how much explosion-heavy action there is. And dimension 3 is how much romance is in the plot. By plotting those three numbers, you can mathematically prove that Die Hard is further away from the Notebook than it is from the Terminator.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Now, instead of just three genres, imagine the AI is plotting 3,072 distinct professional concepts.
Oh, wow.
Everything from macroeconomics to Python programming to B2B sales strategy. The model does the exact same thing for every single piece of content published on the platform, placing the post at a specific coordinate in that same massive space.
So it's all about proximity.
Exactly. The retrieval process is just the AI measuring the mathematical distance between your member embedding and the contents embedding. If the coordinates are close, you make the 2,000-person shortlist.
Before we go deeper into that space, I want to clarify something for our listeners.
Yeah.
Because the source material mentions a completely separate retrieval system called FishDB.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels like a massive caveat for anyone relying on older content.
Oh, yeah. FishDB is critical to understand. While the causal LLM handles finding new audiences, people you aren't connected with, FishDB is the dedicated retrieval engine for your direct network.
Oh.
If someone follows you, or you are first-degree connections, FishDB is the system that pulls your content into their candidate pool.
But the document highlights a massive limitation with FishDB. It operates on a hard, non-negotiable 30-day window.
Yeah, that 30-day cliff is hard-coded into the infrastructure. If a post is older than 30 days, FishDB literally drops it from the index.
Wow.
It cannot retrieve it for your followers. It vanishes entirely from that connection-based pathway.
So for you listening, if you're banking on that incredible evergreen manifesto you wrote 2 months ago to keep circulating among your followers, it's not happening. For your direct network, content has a strict expiration date. But for reaching out-of-network professionals, the people who don't follow you yet, that is entirely controlled by the causal LLM and those 3,072 dimensions. Which brings me to a major piece of advice gurus love to push.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Right. If it's an AI reading my post to determine my coordinates, shouldn't I just stuff the first sentence with industry buzzwords? The common knowledge is that algorithms only read the first few lines and ignore the rest.
That advice is such a relic of the old keyword SEO era. In a large language model architecture, doing that will actually destroy your reach.
Destroy it, really.
Completely. And the reason comes down to a mathematical process called mean pooling.
Okay, mean pooling. Walk us through how that actually processes a post.
To understand mean pooling, we first have to understand tokens. When an LLM reads your post, it doesn't see words the way we do. It chops the text up into tokens, which are basically pieces of words or individual concepts.
Right, so like marketing might be one token, but a really complex word might be split into 2 or 3.
Correct. So when the causal LLM generates the embedding for your post, it looks at the mathematical representation of every single token. Mean pooling means it takes the mathematical value of every single token in your post and averages them all together equally.
All of them equally. Okay, so if I'm understanding mean pooling correctly, it's like blending a smoothie.
Okay, I like that.
If I put in 90% fresh strawberries, but right at the end I drop in a handful of raw garlic, the whole thing tastes like garlic. Every single ingredient alters the average flavor. So every word dilutes the average mathematical coordinate.
That is exactly what happens mathematically. If you start your post incredibly strong, focused entirely on, say, enterprise SaaS sales tactics, the model starts plotting you in that specific, highly valuable neighborhood.
Right.
But if the second half of your post rambles off topic into a story about your weekend hiking trip or a random productivity hack you found, the average of those new tokens pulls your coordinate away from the target.
Because it's averaging the hiking tokens with the sales tokens.
Exactly. Your embedding loses its sharpness. You drift into the middle of concept space, which is essentially the mathematical suburbs where you don't closely match any specific target audience.
That is a staggering realization. Every single word you write on your profile and in your posts is literally a vote for where you live in this 3,072 dimensional universe. You really have to ask yourself, are you voting for a clear, distinct neighborhood? Or are you just scattering your votes all across the map and ending up lost?
Yeah, mathematical precision requires focus and coherence from the very first word to the very last.
Which brings us to the second gate of the pipeline. Let's say you write a perfectly coherent post. Your embedding is razor sharp. The causal LLM measures the distance, finds a match, and selects your content as one of the 2,000 candidates for a user's feed. You have survived the AI recruiter.
Now you face the interview panel.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because this second brain, the generative recommender, or feed SR as the engineers call it, is fundamentally different from the first one. It is a sequential transformer model. But unlike the causal LLM we just spent all this time analyzing, it does not read your text.
It processes zero natural language.
It's like Spotify. Spotify doesn't ask you to sit down and write a 5-page essay explaining your evolving music taste. It just sits quietly in the background and watches what you skip, what you replay, what you add to a playlist, and it builds an incredibly accurate behavioral pattern.
That's spot on.
That's exactly what the generative recommender is doing with your professional interests. It reads a chronological sequence of your last 1,000 behavioral interactions. It looks at what appeared on your screen and what you did with it.
And evaluating a sequence of 1,000 interactions requires a specialized mechanism. The system uses something called causal attention. Because it's reading your interactions chronologically, the model assigns the most mathematical weight to your absolute most recent actions.
So it's heavily biased toward the present. What I clicked on yesterday matters significantly more than what I clicked on in January.
Exponentially more. An interaction from 6 months ago has almost zero influence compared to what you spent 3 minutes reading this morning.
Makes sense.
But the engineering goes even deeper to understand how you interacted. The generative recommender utilizes a multi-gate mixture of experts prediction head.
Okay, multi-gate mixture of experts. Let me guess how this works. Instead of one giant brain trying to figure out every single thing you do, it literally routes the task to a committee of different expert submodels. Like, one expert only cares about what you like, and another expert only analyzes what you comment on.
You've nailed the architecture. And the reason it uses that committee is because it needs to evaluate active tasks and passive tasks entirely differently.
Active versus passive.
Right. A passive task is a simple, like, or dwell time just stopping your scroll to read a post. An active task is writing a thoughtful comment or sharing a post with your own added perspective. The experts in the model that handle active engagement carry significantly more weight when predicting what should go at the top of your feed.
Think about your own daily habits for a second. Your engagement history is your actual professional identity to this ranking model. If you're taking 5 minutes on your lunch break to mindlessly drop reflexive, like on random meme posts or viral complaints, you are actively confusing the AI.
You're just generating noise.
Exactly. You are diluting your behavioral signal.
Yeah.
But if you take those same 5 minutes to write one thoughtful, well-crafted comment on a highly niche post in your specific industry, that sharpens your signal incredibly well.
The system is designed to learn from friction. It learns from what you invest effort into, not just what you passively let wash over you.
Okay, so now we understand the mechanisms of both brains. The text reading AI that uses mean pooling to build the shortlist, and the behavior reading AI that uses causal attention to rank the feed.
Right.
But how does a user practically align them, especially someone who is just starting out and doesn't have 10,000 followers?
Well, this specific dynamic is what the researchers in the document refer to as the cold start revolution.
The old mechanical system heavily favored people who already had massive networks, right? Because visibility was just a math equation of how many people hit the like button in the first hour.
But the new two-stage architecture fundamentally levels the playing field for smaller creators. In fact, the data from the rollout shows a 1.17% increase in unique interactions specifically for low connection users.
Wow. And that's because it relies on semantic matching of your text rather than just who you know. The causal LLM can read a brand new profile, understand the concepts perfectly, and place it in front of the exact right audience on day one. But to truly activate this, we have to look at how we feed these systems in real time, which brings up a tactic in the source material that honestly made me pause. The warm-up.
Ah, yes.
The guide suggests engaging with content for 20 minutes right before you publish your own post. Now, I've got to push back on this. We established at the very beginning that we were completely done with cheap guru hacks. How is this warm-up routine not just another tired trick to game the algorithm?
I get it. On the surface, it definitely sounds like a traditional engagement hack. But the technical justification for it is rooted in hard infrastructure rules, specifically service level agreements, or SLAs, that govern data freshness across the pipeline.
Wait, if the model is constantly updating, there must be a time limit on when it takes a snapshot of my activity. Are you saying the 20-minute window forces a refresh?
Precisely. The causal LLM is mandated by its SLA to update your member embedding within 30 minutes of any new activity.
Oh, that's fast.
It is incredibly fast. By engaging thoughtfully with content in your specific niche right before you post, you are forcing the system to recalculate your embedding coordinates. You're updating your map to reflect your immediate current topical focus.
Oh, wow. And because of the causal attention to the generative recommender, I'm also placing those high-weight active signals at the very end of my 1,000 interaction sequence.
Yes. You are providing the entire two-stage pipeline with highly accurate, up-to-the-minute context about exactly what professional neighborhood you are operating in right now.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's not a trick. It's just handing the system the updated map it needs before it starts driving.
Exactly.
And speaking of handing the system data, there's another fascinating architectural quirk mentioned. The generative recommender doesn't just look at your behavioral sequence. The document notes it uses a separate, much smaller model, a Qwen 3 0.6b model, to late fuse a profile embedding into the ranking decision. Wait, late fusion. Does that mean it waits until the very last millisecond before the feed loads to inject my profile text into the math?
That is the engineering reality of late fusion. The generative recommender is incredibly fast at processing your behavior, but processing dense text is computationally heavy. So this separate Qwen 3 model processes your profile text and holds it. Right before the final ranking decision is made, it fuses that text data into the behavioral data.
Meaning, even if you are brand new and you have zero engagement history for the generative recommender to analyze, having a fully optimized, clearly written text profile gives this Qwen 3 model the data it needs to help rank your content. Profile text matters at both the retrieval stage and the ranking stage.
It acts as the ultimate failsafe for relevance.
So what does this all mean when we bring it into the real world? We've come at how to optimize perfectly for the math. We understand mean pooling, tokens, and behavioral sequences, but the sources also devote significant time to the final invisible layer of the pipeline.
The guardrails.
Right, the realities and the guardrails that exist after the AI do all of its math.
Because raw relevance does not completely dictate what ends up on the screen. The platform has strict guardrails applied after ranking. The most obvious is trust and safety filters, which block policy violations. But there are also mechanisms like impression discounting.
Meaning, if you've scrolled past a post and seen it, the system logs that impression. It won't keep showing it to you the next time you open the app, no matter how highly it ranks mathematically.
Right. The system actively prevents feed fatigue. It also utilizes anti-gaming frequency caps,
Which prevent one single author from flooding a user's feed. Even if you write 5 posts in a day, and all 5 score perfectly with the generative recommender for a specific user, the frequency cap steps in and says, nope, we need to show this user a diverse range of voices.
Diversity of content is a post-ranking mandate.
Which brings up a slightly uncomfortable but absolutely necessary question about the math itself. If the AI is doing all this complex analysis, reading our words, plotting us in 3,000 dimensions, does it ever get it wrong? Does it bring any inherent biases into these dimensions?
That is a critical area of ongoing academic research. And the guide includes a fascinating study by Trust Insights that looked into exactly this vulnerability.
Let's walk through their methodology because it's brilliant in its simplicity.
So the researchers at Trust Insights wanted to test the base LAM-A3 model, which is the underlying foundation of the causal LLM used for retrieval. To do this, they fed the model identical professional posts. Word for word, the exact same text, the exact same concepts. The only single variable they changed was the author's name at the top of the post.
So same exact resume, different name at the top. And what happened to the math?
They found a systematic deviation in the embedding coordinates. Just by changing the name, there was an approximately 0.6% deviation in what is called cosine similarity.
Let's define cosine similarity quickly for the listener. If you imagine those 3,072 dimensions as lines pointing out from a center point, cosine similarity measures the angle between two lines. If they point in the exact same direction, the similarity is high. The study found that just changing the name shifted the angle.
Right. The AI interpreted the exact same professional expertise slightly differently, placing it in a slightly different mathematical location based solely on the cultural or gender associations the base model had learned regarding that specific name.
Now, we want to be very clear and impartial about this. As the researchers carefully note, we do not know if LinkedIn's extensive fine-tuning and proprietary post-training mitigates this base model bias in their final production system. We're just reporting the findings on the foundational open source model.
Right, that's an important distinction.
But the underlying reality of how these models function remains exactly the same, doesn't it?
The inescapable takeaway is that large language models process all textual input. Every single word, every name, every phrasing choice carries semantic weight and alters the final coordinate.
Which is exactly why users must focus so intensely on the text they actually can control. Your clarity, your consistency, the specific value you articulate in your headline, your about section, your experience. You have to make those signals so undeniably strong so completely focused that they overpower any systemic noise or baseline variance. You have to write with absolute, ruthless precision.
You cannot access the model's weights to change how it calculates, but you possess total control over the inputs you feed it.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, moving from a dead mechanical system to a highly complex AI architecture. Let's recap the dual nature of this new paradigm.
Sounds good.
Stage one is retrieval. The causal LLM needs precise, coherent language across your entire profile and your posts to map your semantic coordinates accurately. If you don't use clear language, mean pooling blends your tokens into a muddy embedding, and the AI recruiter throws your resume in the trash.
And stage 2 is ranking. The generative recommender needs consistent, topically focused, recent engagement behavior to build your sequential pattern. It is actively watching what you do, prioritizing your active tasks over your passive ones, and heavily weighting your most recent actions.
Language to get in the door. Behavior to get to the top. That is the new formula. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you listening with a final provocative thought. It's based on a really critical detail buried deep in the source material regarding that semantic identity. We mentioned that the causal LLM builds your coordinates using both your text and your engagement history. But the engineers specifically note that it uses only your positive engagements.
It fundamentally ignores what you scroll past. It ignores what you dislike or ignore. It only learns your professional identity from what you actively approve of.
So imagine for a second that this AI were to print out a one-page summary of who you are as a professional. But it isn't allowed to read your carefully crafted resume. It isn't allowed to look at your job title. It's only allowed to base this summary exclusively on the last 50 things you hit the like button on, commented on, or shared. What would that piece of paper say? Would it describe a focused, insightful leader who adds value to your specific industry? Or would it describe someone distracted by memes, drawn into endless arguments, and constantly clicking on random viral outrage?
Does your click history actually reflect the professional you want the world to see?
Let that question guide your very next interaction on the platform. Because the era of treating social media like a mechanical vending machine is permanently over. There are no cheat codes anymore. You are communicating with a sophisticated intelligence that is constantly quietly learning who you are. Make sure you are telling it the right story.